Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Property Investment Australia podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Lachlan, Vidler, and as always, ever faithfully, I'm joined by my other co-host, Will Sanchez. Will.
Thank you very much, sir. I liked it.
You liked it?
Thank you.
You liked it?
Thank you.
I feel like I've got it down pat pretty well, and I just try and throw my little tweaks on it. But mate, we've got a good episode lined up for today. Do you want to tell everyone what we're going to be talking about?
I can,
Yeah.
if you allow me.
You know what? I'll give you permission. Fire away.
All right. So how to balance and leverage risk when building a portfolio. Do you like that?
I do like that. I do. Absolutely. So I think that balance with leverage and risk, especially when you're building a portfolio, is a conversation that comes up a lot for me, and I don't even do the finance. I imagine it comes up a lot for you as well.
Yeah, no, it does. It does. I think when it comes down to the repayments, I think that's the key point people want to understand.
Yeah.
For obvious reasons. Cash flow.
Yeah.
I think that's probably number one.
Yeah.
But the risk, we don't talk much about like risk and balancing and stuff like, because it's more like a strategy.
Yeah.
So I would assume they talk more around these things with your team, right?
Yeah, and I think the thing that I really want to talk about today is not risk in terms of property risk. I think I really want to talk about risk through the lens of the risk that comes with borrowing money,
Investing,
right? And
yeah.
you know, and like through using leverage, because like any investment obviously inherently has risks, but I think that something that is often not talked a lot about, because like property is quite a safe asset class in Australia, and we take on hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars of debt, especially for, you know, people who have a few properties. And we often don't really bring in that risk part of the conversation with that. That's what I want to talk about today.
Mm-hmm. I like it.
You like it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think the first place to start is making sure that we're all on the same page and you know, sort of understand like what leverage is and why it does add risk into the equation. I think that's the first place to start. So, I mean, simply leverage is just using borrowed money, right? In Australia, we borrow from the bank.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what it is at the end of the day. And I guess the reason that it ends up carrying risk, or why it adds risk into the equation, is because if you don't make your payments, somebody else could make a claim on your asset. You know, I'm curious, have you ever had a scenario where a bank has had to foreclose on a property?
Not on my clients.
None of your clients?
No.
No.
Luckily.
Yeah.
Well, through COVID, we did have lots of conversation around grace periods and holiday periods, or whatever your bank calls it.
Yeah.
We did talk a lot about that and how to help the clients navigate through like in certain periods.
Yeah.
COVID more specifically, but not foreclosures and stuff
okay.
like that. No, we do come across people who buy these types of properties.
Distressed properties. Yeah. In fairness, it is quite uncommon in Australia. Like, not a lot of properties actually end up being distressed sales. Like, we all jump on the bandwagon and talking about how hard it is to borrow and like, you know, loosen up the standards and this and that and that. But the reason why we don't have a lot of foreclosures and the reason why we do have such a strong property market is because it's underpinned by really strong
good
rules and regulations. Yeah, absolutely. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I swear that I read that back when banks were doing those like holiday and grace periods and stuff in COVID, if you ended up requesting it, it actually went on your credit file.
Yes and no.
Yeah?
Yeah, yes and no. Massive issue for the banks.
Yeah.
When they don't advise the customers what's involved.
Mm.
But you got to actually talk to them and say, well, this cannot go on my file, and understand what was involved. Because it did happen with some banks.
Yeah. I remember reading the news.
It did happen. It did happen with a lot of banks because obviously it was such a, you know, different environment for everyone, including the banks.
Yeah,
they had to implement changes very fast.
Yeah.
In big banks, you know how it is. Like if it's a big organization, there's not enough time to to release properly, train people to do. So people were just doing it and helping people out, like going through just all of a sudden it's an interest only period for like 3 months.
Yeah.
4 months, whatever the case may be. Then, if it's not a good set in stone process, someone could raise. Well, hang on a minute, you delay 6 months. Look at your and I've had that, to be honest. I remember. I've had clients who had that sort of stuff.
Have you
But they fix it. The bank has to fix it.
I was gonna say, so what? Like when
They go back to the bank.
Yeah.
They raise it.
Yeah.
Because you got to have the evidence, right?
Yeah.
And more often than not, the call is recorded. So if they did call, you can request for the call to. That's hard as well, because you got to remember the date, you got to remember the time, because the bank can just fob you off. Say, when did you call? What time? Who did you speak to?
Yeah.
Then it's a way to fob you off. Some of them, but if you know, then you can, because I got clients who went back to the bank and they sort of fixed the reporting.
So what was it? It was basically you just went back and said like, oh hey, like,
because it doesn't show. No, like if you haven't paid your credit card, it shows like 1, then the next month 2, the next month all the way to 6 or whatever. Then it happened. Then your credit scoring goes all the way to like 300, 200.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah, I've seen it. It's crazy.
But I guess, like, especially for the conversation we're having today around balancing leverage and risk, it's like, it was obviously very unique circumstance, but it goes to show how leverage, or using borrowed money, using other people's money, it does add risk, and like people, and it was more typically homeowners than it was investors. But like, I think that's a great example of the fact that even though it was a unique scenario, people then were put in a position that was outside sort of what their risk tolerance was, and then they had issues.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, if you're borrowing money against an asset, and obviously it's backed by the same asset you're buying, there's always the risk of the value of the property either going up or down.
Yeah.
If it goes down, that's where the problem lies.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's I think, like, at the end of the day, and it's the word I wrote down here, it's responsibility, right? Like we talk about, I said, like, what is leverage and why does it add risk? And that word, responsibility, I think that's the biggest thing, right? Like,
the commitment itself.
Yeah. Like, you have that responsibility that you got to pay $2,000 or $3,000 every whatever period. And if you can't do that, you're going to find yourself in trouble. And then if you consistently don't do that, that use of leverage is going to be your undoing. I know it's a very pessimistic thing to say, but that's what I want to talk about on this episode, because I think a lot of people, especially in investments, it's all about taking risk. You've got to balance it. And we'll talk about that a little bit more
I've got so many different examples, my friend, around this risks and what's happened to them. I've seen. But maybe not the forum today, but I've got some really good examples.
We can do an episode, Stories by Will.
Yeah,
Stories by Will.
I think that's gonna get lots of listeners.
So leverage, obviously. So we've talked about like what leverage is. We talked about why it adds risk, and I guess that just to slightly counterbalance that conversation before we talk about, I said counterbalance, even though my next thing is going to be how we actually do balance it. I think to provide a rebalancing in this aspect of the conversation, right? The reason why leverage is so powerful is because leverage allows you to control an asset that's greater than the value of the money that you used to buy it, right? The money that you actually had, right? And I'll give you an example. So let's say you had $100K, right? $100,000, and you were sitting there and you were going, I want to buy shares, should I buy shares or should I buy property, right? Now, you can go and get loans for shares. It's called margin lending. However, 99.9% of people will never touch that, right? So for most people, when they talk about investing in shares,
most people don't even know that exists.
Did you know that?
Yeah, absolutely.
I was going to say, I mean, you're the finance guy here. I'm sure you knew about it.
No, I've got my NAB trade account.
You got your NAB?
I've got my com as well.
I was going to say, shout out to NAB and CBA if you want to give us some sponsorship dollars there for Will's trade account.
Yeah, that's it.
But for most people, whatever money you have, if you're going to invest in shares, that's all you're going to have, right? So if you've got that 100K, you're going to buy 100K worth of shares, right? So we'll go down the share example first, and we'll come back. We'll kind of property. So if you've got 100K in shares, 100K, sorry, you go buy 100K worth of shares, right? Dollar for dollar. You're now the proud owner of probably some CBA shares and some, some other shares. NAB, yeah, exactly right, right. you've now controlling $100,000 worth of shares, right? If your portfolio of shares goes up by 10% over the next 12 months, it's going to be worth 110,000 at the end of the year, right? So you're going to make $10,000, right? 10% of 100 grand, 10 grand, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which is nice, right? That's great. Sat there, you've made 10 grand. Awesome, right? But when you come to the property example, right? Let's say you've got that same 100 grand. Now, if with that same 100 grand, depending on how you're going about it and what you're doing and where you're buying, you can probably take that 100 grand and you'd be able to buy probably a $600,000 to $700,000 property, right? And that's all in. That's your deposit, that's your costs, that's everything, right? 100 grand, you're gonna buy $600,000 or $700,000 property, and that's because you're gonna borrow the remaining amount, right? You're gonna borrow that additional $500,000 to $600,000, depending on if you bought a $600,000 or $700,000 property, right? Now you've put in 100. I'll say it was a 600K property. You put in 100, but you now control an asset that's worth 600. So now when that property goes up by 10%, you've just made 60 grand.
As opposed
to the 10 grand that you made in shares. So
the power of
leverage, my friend. Leverage. Touche. You set me up for that. That was like basketball. You're throwing it up and I'll just dunk that one right in. But that is why leverage is so powerful. And that's why we talk about like risk and reward, because you have to take on the risk of borrowing that money, but you get the reward that for the same amount of money that you spent, you're now controlling an asset worth substantially more money, and that asset is now going up by substantially more, right? $60,000 return versus a $10,000 return, right? So that is why leverage is so important, and that's why. And I always, this is something that bothers me.
And you got to remember, it's compound interest.
Yeah, exactly right.
Yeah, so it's 160.
Yeah, it's
not
going,
110.
Right? Yeah, exactly right.
Yeah.
But this is something that really bothers me, right? And it's like, if you jump on LinkedIn or whatever, and you just see, you always see it. I feel like it's always like a bankers versus property conversation, right? Like you see any of those guys that work at like you've got your investment banks or whatever, or even financial advisors, and they're always like, yeah, shares outperform. You go read the news articles, right? And you always see like, returns on property, returns on shares, blah, 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 it's this. And the share market often looks like it's outperformed, right? They'll be like, oh yeah, shares are up like 12% this year, property's only up like 8% this year or whatever. Mm-hmm. But what those things rarely ever take into account is leverage.
Oh yeah.
And I feel it's not a like-for-like conversation, because whilst you can still borrow for the share market is...
But how many people do you know invest, take 100,000 and put all into shares in one go?
Not many,
right?
Yeah, exactly right.
Yeah.
But I think like what I was going to say was that like whilst you can borrow for shares, ultimately like when they track the return of shares, they track the return on like the ASX 200, right? Mm-hmm. And they then just equate that to going, well, the share market's moved this far, right? Mm-hmm. So not too dissimilar to being like, well, they're just going to look at the Australian property market, even though Sydney's different or whatever, right? So I totally understand that. But the difference is that like the vast majority of people who buy property buy it with leverage. Even if it's only a small amount, they buy with leverage. So it's never a like-for-like comparison. And when you actually bring it down to a leveraged result, I'm not going to outwardly claim property 100% outperforms the share market, because I don't actually have the data to support that to make the claim. But I would be very surprised if on a leverage basis, property doesn't outperform. Mm-hmm. Sorry, I'll rephrase.
Overall.
I'd be very surprised if shares still outperformed leveraged property, right? Because you can't beat that, right? Like off that same 100,000.
That causes an imbalance in the market greatly if it goes up by 15, 20, 25, 30% like year on year.
As in the share market?
No, the property price.
Oh, right, yeah.
So how do you sustain that?
Yeah.
The incomes don't grow that fast.
Exactly right.
The deposits don't grow that fast.
Yeah.
So it's just not doable.
Yeah. So, well, I guess we then get into the part of the conversation, which is, how can you then balance wanting to take on leverage or utilize leverage, but with the risk that comes from doing that, right? Mm-hmm. So for me personally, the first and most important thing is got to understand your own risk tolerance,
Your risk profile.
your risk profile.
Mhm.
Exactly right. Because what's good for me, or maybe not good, what's acceptable for me is probably different to what's acceptable for you. Like, think about it, right? I don't have any kids. You've got 3 kids,
Yeah.
right? We're at different ages. We're at different stages of life.
Not that dissimilar.
Nah, I knew you'd hate that one. I knew you'd hate that one as well.
Dang.
It wasn't the kids part, it was the age one, wasn't it? But, you know, like, it's on the balance, like, I'm likely to have a much higher risk tolerance than what you're likely to have.
Yeah.
You know? But then same thing, like, if you went and spoke to one of your mates that's a similar age with kids, very similar scenario on paper. What are you laughing at? You know, if you did that same thing with them, though, like, I would hazard a guess, because you're in business, you know, you're a business owner, and you know, you like property and different things like that. I would hazard a guess that your risk tolerance is probably higher than what theirs would be, especially if they just worked,
Absolutely.
you know,
Yeah, you can't
just worked a
compare.
normal job and that was it.
Yeah,
You
can't
know?
compare, because when you understand something, you're more prone to jump in.
Yeah, definitely.
Right? Yeah,
Definitely. So you need to understand where your risk tolerance sits. And I personally can't tell you the amount of times I've had a conversation with, you know, a client that we've worked with or something like that. And, you know, I don't know, maybe it was a property we're talking about, something like that. And I've always given the same comment, which is like, you know, at the end of the day, if you can't sleep at night because of this, it's wrong. It's not worth it.
No.
You know, even if me compared to that client, I could put triple of that on me and I'd still sleep like a baby. It doesn't matter, because at the end of the day, it's your life, you know, like, if you can't sleep, it means it's outside your risk tolerance, right? And, you know,
and that's something you have to determine before the event.
Exactly.
Before the fact. Absolutely.
Yeah. Or do your very best to.
Yeah,
you know?
exactly. Yeah.
You know, so I think that's the first part, right? You've got to understand your risk tolerance, because if you understand it, that's going to help you to understand how much leverage are you comfortable taking on relative to the risk that you know it will bring to you. You know, and the really easy example for that is that some people might go, you know what, taking on a 90% loan for a property just feels like too much. I only want to do an 80% loan. Now, me personally, man, leverage that up.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah,
give me a 95% loan if I can get it, right?
Absolutely. First home loan deposit scheme.
Yeah. Wish they did that for investment after investment. But you know what I mean? And I know you say, man, we've talked about this that many times for people we've worked on together, let alone people we've done separately.
Yeah.
How many people have we seen where they go, nah, like, I know I've got the money there, I know this, I know that, but like, I only want to do an 80% loan.
Yeah.
You know, like, we've seen that many times. Hey,
Yeah, absolutely.
you know, so risk tolerance, right? To me, that's kind of step one. Then step two becomes, you got to calculate the numbers on the property so that you can understand your cash flow risk.
Oh, I think this is a key one.
You reckon it's key? Yeah.
Yeah. Because ultimately there's a lot of talk around negative gearing.
Yeah.
And I don't think people understand that. They think you can claim negative gearing. So what they go, it's negative, meaning the rental income is less than the expenses.
Yeah.
Right? But then they think they can claim negative gearing every month. So some people, it's the understanding, right, behind it.
Yeah.
So just to maintain that level, you got to come from your pocket.
Yeah.
It's your responsibility. You have to pay for the loan, for the cost, the outgoings, and then at the end of the financial year, that's when the tax is done, and then you can claim the negative gearing.
Yeah.
But a lot of people don't understand that.
Of course. I mean, look, to be fair, you can put in the tax variations.
Yeah.
To do that if you want to get it a little bit earlier. But again, if you don't understand your property numbers and you do the variation wrong, then
it defeats the purpose.
Exactly right. You're going to end up, you thought you were getting a refund, but now you just owe money at the end of the year.
Exactly.
You know? But, you know, I think the property numbers are so important, because at the end of the day, like, the risk that comes from leverage isn't so much associated with the potential growth of the property. It's to do with the cash flow, because the property could grow by $1 million in a month, but if you can't pay the mortgage on it or the outgoings, that doesn't matter, you know. So that's why I'm saying, like, I think the numbers are important, but it's about understanding the cash flow risk that comes from leveraging, because if you don't, you know, you're up that creek that we all know about, and you don't have a paddle for it.
Yeah.
So it's so
nicely put.
You like that one? Yeah. We'll keep the clean rating on the
I like
on
it.
the podcast, right? So you know, you understand your risk tolerance. You then calculate and understand your property numbers, but especially to understand that cash flow risk. And then from that, I think it then really helps you to understand, do you / can you want or take on more or less debt? You know, because it could be, I want more debt, but I physically just cannot mathematically do that, you know? Or it could be, I could mathematically do it, but I don't want it.
But I can't sleep at night.
Exactly right. You know, numbers don't work, risk tolerance doesn't work. It just doesn't make sense for me to do it. So I think that's where it really helps to work, you know? And I think, again, like we've worked on heaps of deals where I think somebody has come in, they've had an idea about something.
I've got someone in mind, a couple.
Yeah.
I think the guy did it.
Yeah.
But the partner didn't like it, so she didn't want to do it. So he kept buying in his name only. So I remember,
Bold.
Yeah, exactly.
Bold.
He'll soon understand. Happy wife, happy life.
Yeah. Well, and then she'll be happy because he's taking all the risk on, and then she gets the properties.
Yeah,
you know?
exactly.
No, but yeah. So that, I think that helps you understand whether you want to be on more or less debt, and then I think it's kind of related to all of what we've been saying. But then after you've kind of done all that, it really helps you understand how the benefits of leverage are going to help or hinder your scenario, right? Because you can then look at calculating, well, thanks to this leverage at X% or Y%, like this is how my gain, my total gain changes. The tax, so like what you were saying before, like I think it really brings in that tax conversation, because if you take on more debt, there's more repayments, which means more deductions, which means you're probably going to have a you're going to show less income. But then if you take on less, maybe you're now positive, so now you are paying tax. And even though I personally have no issue paying tax, some people have a real
well, if you're paying tax, it's a good thing.
Exactly right. But you know what I mean? So I think once you understand all those pieces, you can really understand like what that leverage is doing for you, and whether what it's doing for you, that benefit, is worth the risk that you're taking on. And I mean, let's be real, like we're talking about leverage and risk. Like for most people, taking on a loan for their first or second investment property is not a lot of debt, right? Like let's say you got $1 million worth of debt out there, right? And it's not like we're talking about $1 million of credit card debt. We're talking about $1 million of debt associated with an asset that if you do it well, it's growing in value. It's okay, right? But I do have a lot of conversations with people that end up going along the lines of like, like we're now onto our fourth or fifth property. We've now got like $2 or $3 million worth of debt. Like it's starting to feel like a lot, and then I think that's where the conversation and everything we've been talking about comes into it, to then personally for you to either understand whether that
it's $2 million loan, but then you've got a $4 million asset.
Yeah, but that's the thing. That's what I'm saying, though. Is that some people don't get it, though. Is that that's where that trade off comes of like, do you understand the benefits
your
of
position,
leverage and
your overarching position?
Exactly right. So that's all that, and then I think the final point is you then got to understand your escape plan, right? So for some people, that escape plan might be that there's no escape.
The terms exit strategy,
exit strategy, yeah. So for some people, it might just be like, well, we don't have one. Like we don't have one. We're actively happy with the fact we've got debt. Like we'll die with debt at 60. 60. God, I don't
my God, jeez.
That's closer for you than it is for me, my friend. Talking
That's
about
the third
age.
time you're bringing it up. Oh my God.
I feel like it's just on the train of it this episode. No, sorry. Let me rephrase that.
You have people calling me asking you my age now.
Don't worry, guys.
Unbelievable. I'm going to say 25.
I was going to say he's only 35. Don't worry about it. He's young. But no, I'll rephrase it to, some people might have the plan of, we don't care if we're 80 or 90 and we die and we've got debt on these properties because we know that the cash flow we get and the value and blah, 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 it's good. It's fine, right?
Yep.
Other people, it could be, we want to buy 8 properties or 6 properties and sell 2 or 3 of them, pay out the rest of them, and then we're there. Other people, it might be, I want to buy 1 or 2 properties and I just want to pay down the debt myself. I'm just going to do it over 30 years. Horses for courses.
Absolutely.
Sort of, not really actually horses for courses. Each to their own is probably a better. I think it's an idiom. I think that's what the expression is. I think it's an idiom. Each to their own with that, right? But having some version of your escape plan, because otherwise this leverage is going to build and you're not going to understand what the purpose of it's for and what you're planning to do with it. Even if it's nothing, but I think that the choice of nothing, it has to be an active one, not one that's because you put your head in the sand.
Oh, it's fine if you're doing nothing and the property is growing in value.
Yeah, and I agree.
And the debt's going down, so.
I agree. Personally, I agree, right? Like your LVR shrinks, even if you stayed on interest only for 20 years, as long as the property value is going up.
Yeah, it's fun. Some people, there's heaps of investors, they never paid principal, ever in their entire life.
Man, if I had a choice, I would never do that. I had a choice, honestly, load me up with as much debt as possible. Whack it all on interest only. Let us sit there for the next like 20, 30 years. I would be so happy. I can tell you about risk tolerance. I would sleep like a baby.
But that's what I call confidence, eh? You know you're doing the right thing. We're buying the right assets if you're saying that.
Exactly right. Yeah, exactly right. But, well, my friend, my Brazilian friend.
Yeah. Young too.
My young Brazilian friend. Hey, that's everything we had for today. That's everything we had today.
Beautiful.
Balancing leverage and risk when building a portfolio.
Good. Straight to the point.
Yeah.
Bang, bang, bang. Really good.
Yeah.
Yep.
We're doing our own self-critique after this. You know what? I think we killed it. We did a great job. We were straight to the point. We gave a great, No, mate, look, again, as always, I really appreciate your insights. You've got great stories from the finance side and also the property side. But I really enjoyed our episode. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you.
And for everyone listening in, that's all we have for you today. And before you go, please, please, please give us those 5 stars on whatever platform you're listening to us on. We really appreciate it. It helps us keep doing this, keep driving us up the charts. And if you want to get in contact with us, if you're looking for your financing needs or help, go and have a chat with Will and the team at Aussie Newtown. Right, details are in the episode link and the show link, bio, whatever you want to call it. And if you're looking, especially now that we're getting into the new year, right? If you're looking to start or grow or build your property portfolio, you want to come and have a chat with a team that are 8 times REB finalists, 3 of which are for this year, which we'll find out next month around whether or not we won Buyers Agent of the Year or Innovator of the Year for all of our insane tech that we've built. Come and have a chat with myself and the team, right? atlaspropertygroup.com.au. My details are also in the episode bio and the show bio. But until next time, guys, thanks for tuning in, and we'll be back with you soon.
This is a Piccolo podcast production.